I miss my bookshelf. Hello book fighters, it is Thursday, April 7th, and this week I am going to be talking about Dearly Devoted Dexter and Dexter by Design. So I decided to read these books because I really love the TV show Dexter, and the books are what the show was based on. There are a lot of differences between the books and the TV show. It's not even, it's just sort of vaguely based on the books. The characters are very different from one to the next. Dexter himself is pretty much the same, but his sister is different. Angel Batista is different. All of the characters are very different from one to the next. And some of the characters on the show are kind of a mashup of several characters from the books. And so it's interesting to see both sides. Personally, I actually like the TV show better than the books, which surprised me. Generally, I like the books better whenever it's based on a book, because the books are just more full, more rounded. But with the TV show, I feel like the show is much more complex, and they made the characters more interesting and likable than in the books themselves. And I think when it comes to book-to-film translation, I think TV is a much better genre. It's much more well-suited for that translation than movies are, because movies are sort of held back by the time limit. Like, you can only do 2, maybe 3 hours on a movie, and so you end up cutting a lot out of the book, which is why everybody hates the movies that are based off of books, because you have to take out so much and change little things. And I do believe you can have a great movie based off of a book, but you can't ever have a direct translation from book to movie. Whereas with television, you end up really having to putting more peaks of action in it, because a book is one continuous story and a television show is one continuous story, but also all these little stories within it. So I feel like television is better suited for this genre, and I would really like to see more books made into TV shows, because I feel like it can be so well done. And television is great. Television gets such a bad rap because generally it's awful, and just not complex at all, and it doesn't take its viewers seriously. But when it does, I feel like it is the genre with the most storytelling possibility. I feel like it has a setting that allows you to tell these complex stories and really delve into characters and ideas much more than even a book can do. So I was really impressed with the way they took the Dexter books and made them into a television show, especially given that I ended up liking the show more. Speaking just of the books, Dexter, the main character, is a serial killer who lives by a code that he was taught by his dad, that you only kill the bad guys. So he's a serial killer, but he only kills other serial killers. So he's sort of this sympathetic character, even though generally he'd be classified as a villain. So what you end up with is a sociopath with an artificial conscience. He doesn't do things because he feels a certain way about them. It's because he's been taught a code, and it's all about survival, but he doesn't really have emotions attached to things. And so you get sort of an outsider's perspective on human behavior and human interactions, because he sees all this stuff happening, and he doesn't understand it, or he understands it academically, but he can't empathize. And so you get this very outsider, unbiased look at it. And I think that's really interesting. I think that it has the potential to say a lot about the human condition and human behavior, and there were a lot of interesting observations in it. I did find myself getting a little bored through the second book, because as interesting as the Dexter character is, the stories themselves aren't super compelling for me personally. I didn't really get excited when I was reading them. So it's all about the characters, and that's great, and that can definitely carry a story. But reading 2 of them right in a row, I was starting to lose interest. The funny thing about it is when I was reading it, I was also watching The Big Bang Theory, and the voices of Sheldon Cooper and Dexter Morgan would kind of get mixed up in my head, because they're both so, like, outside of the normal human social interactions and so analytical and clinical about everything. Then sometimes when I was reading Dexter, I would hear Sheldon Cooper saying the lines. So that was sort of funny. It did kind of take me out of the story, but that had nothing to do with the books. It was just my own crazy mind at work. So I really enjoyed these books. I would definitely recommend that you read them, and definitely also watch the show if you can. It is excellent. So the book I'll be reading next week is If You Have to Cry, Go Outside, and Other Things Your Mother Didn't Tell You. I think that's what the whole title is. I'm reading it on my Kindle. I've actually already started it. I'm like 3 chapters through it already, and it's great so far. So I'm reading that next week. So I realized as I was sitting down to film this that I don't think that I've seen everyone's videos this week. I think that I watched Julia's and Lauren's. But I know I haven't watched Sarah's, and I think I missed Dan's too. So if you guys ask questions, I don't know. It's been sort of a crazy week, so I haven't watched really any videos for the last week or so on YouTube. So I'll watch those, and if there were questions, I'll try to answer them next week. So my question for you guys this week has something kind of to do with the Dexter books and television show. I find when I watch the show and read the books, there are times when I sort of unsettlingly really relate to Dexter and the way that he thinks and the way that he interacts with people. It's a little worrisome when you realize that you empathize more with the serial killer character than you do with most leading men and ladies in fiction. So it sort of took me by surprise, but yeah, I could definitely relate to Dexter in a lot of ways, in both the book and the television show. So my question for you guys this week is, has there ever been a character in TV, movies, books, whatever, that you found that you could really relate to, that you could really empathize with, that surprised you in some way, that when you looked at what the character was, you would not have thought that you could relate to it, and it kind of took you by surprise. So that's my question for you guys this week. I hope it made sense. And Julia, I will see you tomorrow.